I don't want anyone to let me go. So. Yeah.
Family and friends, we're going to begin our ceremony. And I encourage those of you who are standing, please find a seat if you're comfortable doing so. And by all means, do encourage everyone to get out of the sun. In honor of Leon's military service, we're going to begin with the Honor Guard making a presentation. Viti Adonai lenegi tamid Imimeni balemot Lachen samech lebi Vigal kivodi Avasrei shakon Liveta. I have set the eternal always before me. God is at my side. I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exult and my soul rejoice. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me the path of life. Your presence, O Lord, brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. As for us, you turn to us and say, return, you mortals. The days of our years are 70, or through strength, 80 years, 80 years and 10, 80 years and 11. But 1,000 years in God's sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the nighttime. Teach us, therefore, to number our days, that we may attain a heart of wisdom. And may your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it may long endure. In a time of grief, we listen to the voice of sacred scriptures, bringing us the ever-new message of God's nearness. These texts tell us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in day as in night, in life as in death. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, or taken the path of sinners, or joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose foliage never fades, and whose fruit always flourishes. So many generations have found comfort in the words of the 23rd Psalm. I will recite this first in Hebrew, and then you are welcome to join me in the familiar English translation from the King James translation. Adonai roi lo exal, bino desha yirbetzeni, alchein menuchat yinachaleni, nafshi yoshvev, yinachani, v'maglet tzedek, v'laman shemo, gam ki elech, the gates al mavet, lo irada, ki ata imadi. Shiftecha u'mashaltecha, ema yenachamuni, ta'arov, b'fenai, shulchan neged sorai, Yeshanta v'shem et roshi, kosi ravaya, ach tov v'chesed yardufuni, o yamecha, v'shavti v'teit Adonai, lo'orech yamim. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. Restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Ecclesiastes writes, L'chol zaman ve'et l'chol chafetz tachat hashamayim. For everything there is a season, time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to hold back, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. Now it's time to speak of the life and legacy of Leon Zimmerman. To begin that process, I would like first to invite his daughter, Laura.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Laura, the older one, but only by 23 months. Speaking at my dad's funeral is always something I knew I wanted to do. Even though I'm usually a little timid to speak in front of adults, it's just never difficult to speak in front of people when it's a topic you're very passionate about. And my dad is my #1 fan. He was there when I took my first breath, and I was there when he took his last. However, it's not about the relationship you have at the end of someone's life. It's about the relationship you've had your whole life. My relationship with my dad was awesome because it's so easy to have a relationship with someone when they put you first all the time and put themselves second. My dad was so unselfish. He was a kind, compassionate person. He never met a stranger and treated everyone just as he would want to be treated. In fact, we had a painting in our house that said, "Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you." There are so many stories that come to mind that demonstrate these characteristics that I mentioned about my dad. One story I recall being on a family beach vacation in Hilton Head with my sister and her family. My mom and dad and I left from the beach house late one night to get some eardrops for my son. My mom and I waited in the car, and when my dad came out of the store, he was not alone. He had met a friend that needed a ride, and of course my dad offered to give him one. My dad had also purchased a CD that the new friend that he had met had written. So we had an interesting 20-minute ride around Hilton Head, learning about this guy's life while listening to his music. Another story, again, that happened late one night. The phone rang. We were at home, and my mom answered it. We woke up my dad off the couch from snoring, which was his usual position every night. And my dad got off the phone, and the next thing we knew, he was heading out the door. My mom asked where he was going because she was so concerned since it was late at night. He said he was meeting someone in the Food Line parking lot because they needed money. My mom asked him who it was, but he didn't quite remember since he had been woken up from a deep sleep. But he said he knew him and that they had worked for him before, so it was okay. My mom and I still followed him to the parking lot just to make sure that everything was okay. And this kind of thing didn't just happen occasionally. It happened often because it was who my dad was. Doing things for others, Helping others is what made my dad happy. Recently, my dad got the sweetest note in the mail from someone that used to work for him, and it said, "Hey, Leon, do you remember when you co-signed a car loan for me? That was really pretty awesome. I think the amount was $500. I want to thank you for believing in me. You were just like a second father to me, and you gave me lots of advice, some of which I should have taken. But I did learn a lot from you, which I later used in my own business that I had 28 years. He helped and took care of so many people, not only through his clothing business, but even after he retired. He made it a priority to visit his sister Rose almost daily in the nursing home at the end of her life. And he also took care of my great uncle, Billy Burke, every day at the end of his life. But I'm just so very, very lucky that I did not take the jobs that I interviewed for in Raleigh when I graduated. Dad talked me into moving back home and working at the store until I found a teaching job. I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And even though I didn't want to leave Raleigh, and I thought it was the worst thing in the world to come back to Salisbury, it now shows that it was just the best thing ever. Because my dad also took care of both his grandsons, Blake and Bennett, every single day. Between he and my mom, no one ever called in sick. I didn't have to pay for daycare. I didn't have to pay a babysitter. And I would not have had that if I hadn't lived in Salisbury. Every day when I came home from work, Dad was on the floor playing Monopoly or racing race cars or helping my boys with their math homework. He never complained in the last few years of his life. During the 2.5 years of his illness, not once did he say anything hurt. I have a headache or a pain in my foot, I tell everybody about it. Not once did he say it. All the nurses said he never said it. Until last Thursday, he told one of the nurses he didn't quite feel well or didn't feel quite right. Anytime you helped him during his illness, if I helped him or my mom or whoever, he always said thank you. I just sure hope I can be half of the person that he was. I loved him dearly and I'm going to miss him.
Thank you so much for that. And now Lee, the younger one, as we now know.
That's hard to follow. My dad is actually the one that taught me to get up in front of a group and give a speech. And in fact, when I was in middle school, he encouraged me to participate in the Junior Civitan oratorical contest. And Daniel Silverberg, whose parents are here today, was my competition. And Dad gave me a lot of good tips that have lasted with me regarding giving a speech. He said, prepare and practice, and do it again and again. He said, make eye contact with the people you're speaking to. And he said, be enthusiastic. I've used those tips in my career and in my life up to this point, but today I'm throwing that out the window. This is not something I wanted to prepare for. I didn't want to practice. And I don't want to look you in the eye because I'm afraid I'll see your grief and you'll see mine. Nothing can prepare you for this. But when I look out into the crowd and I see the people that he loved most and that mean the most to us, it makes this grief a little easier. So thank you for being here and thank you for being such a great part of our dad's life. In addition, the reminiscing over the past few days has been very healing. I will say that I learned a couple of things about my dad that I had not known. For example, he was a cheerleader. His senior year in high school, he was a cheerleader. And we have his 1946 yearbook to show that. He also was a basketball player on the Boyden High School basketball team. I don't even think my dad was quite 5'10", and he played basketball. This does make sense to me. He was voted the best dancer in his annual, the best dancer. And I think that that is very appropriate that he married my mom, who also loved to dance. The other thing that I remembered about Dad is he was late for everything. And unfortunately, that's a trait that my sister and I took on ourselves. I think that he was late for everything all of the time. My mom would even say he was to pick her up for a date at 7 o'clock, and at 8:30 he would run in the door and say, "Is it 7 o'clock yet?" I also learned from my mom he had so many speeding tickets, probably because he was late all the time, that at one point he had his license suspended. He also played on the Zimmerman's volleyball team, and he was involved in so many clubs throughout his life. As Laura said, he co-signed several loans for people that we didn't even know about, and he sold so many people their first suit. He also gave so many people their first job. Dad was so many things to so many people, but most importantly, he was a loving husband of 51 years to my mom. That doesn't include the 13 years that they dated before they got married. And I wish our husbands didn't know that, because mine made me date him for 7 and Steve and Laura dated for 10. But Mom and Dad set a very good example for the two of us. Mom, Dad loved you very much. And no one could have done a better job taking care of him. You wouldn't let a lot of people do very much to help you. You did a great job, and Dad knows that. I'm also sincerely thankful to my sister and her husband, who is a blessing to our family, and to all the Post family and everybody else that helped in the last 2.5 years and throughout his illness. Dad definitely left this world knowing how much he was loved, especially by my mom. And in typical Dad fashion, he wanted to make those that he left behind feel loved too. Dad actually spoke his last words about 6 days before he passed, and they were to my mom. And I think it was his way of letting her know that he loved her. She was standing over him at the hospice house. Kent and I were in the room with them. And Mom kept saying to him, "I love you, Leon. I love you so much." And she kept saying it, and Dad was unresponsive. And I kept thinking to myself, please, Dad, give her something. And he was quiet for about 7-8 minutes. And then he whispered, "I love you too." And those were the last words that he said. And I feel so grateful that I got to witness that. And I feel so grateful that my mom heard those words from my dad. And it's so appropriate that Dad let her know on his way out that he loved her. Besides being a great husband to my mom, my dad was an awesome father. He did all the typical dad things. He taught us to ski. He taught us to ice skate. He played with us. He taught us to play tennis. He taught us how to try to give a speech. He did all those great things. But there are a few standout dad moments that I have. One time we were in the mountains, Beach Mountain, where we shared a house with my cousins. And I was in my pajamas. I was young, maybe 10. And Dad came in and said, "Let's go night skiing." And I'd never heard of night skiing. And I was ready for bed. And he said, "Get up, get your ski gear on, let's go night skiing." And we did. And it was one of the best memories I have with my dad. The snow, they were blowing snow. It was a beautiful night, and it was just the two of us. And I'll remember that night forever. Another dad moment was just every Sunday. Every Sunday morning, we made pancakes together in the same bowl. We still have that bowl, an orange bowl. We call it the pancake bowl. He made pancakes with us every Sunday morning and matzo ball soup every Sunday afternoon. Another great moment was working together at a clothing show in New York. And this is before I met my husband. I got asked out on a date by a guy at the clothing show that my family knew. And I said, Dad, can I go have sushi with this guy tonight? And he said, well, you don't know, you've never had sushi. You don't know how to eat sushi. And I said, what's there to know? And he said, well, let's go and I'll show you. And he, you know, my dad, he would never walk away from a customer. But there were 4 or 5 customers in our booth and he walked away and he said, we're closed. And he took me out about 4 o'clock that afternoon to teach me how to eat sushi, what to do with the wasabi, what to do with the soy sauce. And he taught me everything I needed to know. And he said that was because he wanted me to have a good date, even though I don't really think he liked the guy very much. We always knew we were loved by my dad. If I were to ask my mom what her favorite memory of my dad was, I would bet she would say sitting on the beach in Hilton Head and watching everybody play on the beach. It was without fail that at the end of the day, we would say, we're going to head back to the pool. We're going to go inside now. And Mom would say, your dad and I are going to just sit here a little bit longer. And she would grab his hand and the two of them would sit under the tent and they would sit there for hours together. And when I think of Dad and his happiest place, I would say that has to be at the top of the list. So whether you knew my dad as Mr. Z, Leon, Zeke, Sonny, Uncle Sonny, husband, father-in-law, dad or granddad, you felt loved by him and your life was better because of him. And I hope the same that my sister said, that in my life I make people feel half as loved as he made me feel. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much, both of you. When I think of Leon and Rose, 2 Zimmerman children, I think of, this will be a cultural reference that some of you will be familiar with. I think of Doctor Who's TARDIS, bigger on the inside than on the outside. Both Phyllis and Leon were huge people on the inside, though you wouldn't have picked either of them for most basketball teams. But big-hearted, generous, and also with big, generous minds, because they could see other people in the way that other people wanted to be seen. They could acknowledge other human beings in the way that human beings like to be recognized as people, as thoughtful, sentient human people with needs, with vulnerabilities, with anxiety, with cares. And Leon recognized that and accepted that. So indeed, whether you knew him as Mr. Z or Mr. Zimmerman, as Leon, as Sonny, as Uncle Sonny, Grandpa, Leon Zimmerman was a constant beacon of human decency. You could count on him for a friendly reception, an honest smile, genuine kindness,
and generosity when needed. He began working in his family's business here in Salisbury as a youngster. He's a hard worker, and apart from his years at UNC Chapel Hill studying business administration, followed by a stint in the US Army, he spent his life in retail sales, interacting with customers and clients and employees of all sorts. His honesty and civic commitment took him to the directorship of the National Retail Merchants Association, chairmanship of the City Planning Board for 8 years, and active participation in the Rotary Club. Along with Rose of blessed memory and their respective spouses and children, Leon was a dedicated member of Temple Israel. And like Rose, Leon believed in treating people decently despite social prejudices. He hired African-American employees in his Main Street store before other downtown merchants did. With his gracious manner, he showed what it means to be a mensch, a genuine and upright person. So many people responded to family postings on social media to write, "What a kind man. He gave me my first job. Working for him was the best job I ever had." That's a personal legacy of Leon Zimmerman. Yet it is also his legacy for this community. In so many other ways, Leon was a teacher and a mentor, not only to Laura and Lee and their children, your children. He was that and more to his nieces and nephews, whose internet tributes to Uncle Sonny attest to how deeply and widely he was loved. David, Phyllis, Susan, Sam, and Johnny, you mark the passing of someone deeply loved, who was almost a second father. And for your children, Leon seemed much more than an uncle. We know that in the last couple of years, physical difficulties restricted Leon's social activities. It was hard for him to hear, it was hard for people to talk to him, it was hard for him to get out, sometimes impossible for him to get out. And yet, as you both acknowledged, he retained his kind ways, his thoughtfulness to other people, his modesty about his own aches and pains, his stoicism in the face of life's difficulties. Leon and Phyllis have been especially blessed to have Laura and Steve and Blake and Bennett here for continuing practical and moral support. And I knew that they had the love and support of Lee and Kent and your children at a greater distance. To all of you, and especially to you, Phyllis, who say adieu to your devoted love and companion of the last 51 years, and a decade and a half before that. We offer our heartfelt compassion and condolences. May your wonderful memories of Leon always be comforting to you and bring to your lips a smile as loving, joyful as his was. Let us now each take a moment for our own silent remembrances and reflections. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lekach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be God's name. God, you give us loved ones and make them the strength of our life, the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you, the stricken look for comfort, and the sorrow-laden for consolation. Oh God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures and the soul endures as you, oh God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. The years weave a timeless pattern in a world that is the dwelling place of God's love and glory. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Leon Morris Zimmerman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. I will now chant the Hebrew version of that prayer. El Mare Lachamim, Shochen B'Maramim, Amatzeh Melcha, L'chona Tachat Kanfei, Hashchina, Im Kirushim U'Toharim, Zohar Harekiem Mizacherim, Et Nishmat Lezer Bel Ben Shimon Shachar Alamo Just Lehu B'Sefer Gatar Leonim Yisror V'Yisror Hachayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato Noach Bashalom al Mishkavo L'nomar Amen. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision and grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal the divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair, for in God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under divine protection we abide, and by God's love we are comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirit with abiding trust in you. O God, help us to understand that grief and love go hand in hand, that the pain which loss inflicts is the measure of a love stronger than death. Though we cry in the anguish of our hearts, may we be like children who know that their parent is near and who cling unafraid to the trusted hand. In this spirit, O God, do we commit all that is precious to us to your keeping, as we repeat words hallowed by generations. We'll ask the mourners to please rise for the recitation of the Kaddish. Yetidal Shemir Rabba, Yamad Ivrach Yirutei Yamlich Malchutei, V'chayachon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei b'kol Beit Yisrael, V'agalah u'yizman Tari, Amen. V'hei Shemir Rabba, Barak, V'yolam Olam Me'amah, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitbahar, Yitbahan Yitbasen, Yitadar, Yitamer, Yitalal, Shemei B'kidashah, Rifu. ואלה מכל יפתה ושירתה, כוספתה ונחמתה, תבירן ביעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיים וחיים, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי חדל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ועל כל יושבי חדל, ואמרו אמן. May God console you with all who mourn Zion and Jerusalem. Makoyin and Ketosha al Lake Sion, Jerusalem. Let us all say
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our sermon. Thank you all for being here. Please keep in mind that though we are instructed in this precarious time to maintain what is sometimes referred to as social distancing, I prefer to think of it instead as physical distancing. We retain a respectful and healthy distance from one another physically, but it is all the more important to maintain social connection with one another, with this family in mourning, and with all who love Leon Zimmerman, all of you who are connected to one another by that love. Yes. Amen.
Amen. Read.
I asked about I'm better now. You were out of it. You were way out.
I was a little late.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Mom. Mom. Mom.
You know?
Mom.
Y'all doing all right?
Mom.
Good. I saw you the other day. You looked pretty good. You were walking.
I'm gonna stop recording. Here's Ari. Rabbi, nobody. I did a Zoom recording of this because